My next guest is a true Renaissance man, an ex-computer hacker, a world traveler of authoritarian countries, speaks 5 languages, was kidnapped twice, once in Mexico, once in Serbia, has experience in securities work with high-end clients as an attorney on Wall Street, started as far back as 2006 a podcast based on relationship building and became known as a relationship expert. About 5 years ago, he started a brand new podcast and has since, with pure hustle, built this thing to 6 million downloads a month, interviewing everyone from world leaders to athletes to artists to Nobel Prize winners. This guy has a story to tell, yes, but he is a dude with the same types of feelings that we all have. But as you know, we all want to learn from somebody who's been around the world and back 80 times like this cat. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming to the podcast my good friend, Mr. Jordan Harbinger.
I went to Lake Tahoe and I was like, I really want ice cream. And the kids were good. Let's get some ice cream sundaes. Where are we going to get that? Room service has it. It's probably going to be like $100, whatever. It'll be a treat. So I ordered a room service and they're like, what toppings do you want on your 3 scoops of ice cream? And I was like, what are my options? They're like, gummy bears, bananas, berries, whipped cream. And I was like, how much are these? And they're like, well, the ice cream is like $13 per scoop. And I'm like, geez,
Per scoop?
something crazy. It might have been like $10 or something.
Yeah.
And then they're like, but the toppings are free. And I was like, give me all of the toppings. And they're like, okay. So it was $27 total for, it was, the scoops were $8 each. But then there was like they ended up being $27 total. So like 3 scoops was marginally more expensive than one.
Minus the facilities fee.
And then they brought in this like huge cart and everything was on a separate plate and they had like peanut butter and Nutella and whipped cream and like a centerpiece that looked like a swan and the ice cream. And the guy came in with like the metal thing and he was like, all right, guys, are you ready for this? And he was like, Pshang! And the kids were like, yeah. And I'm like, well, that's room service.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this guy was like, hey, here's your stupid fucking salad. You're not getting a fork either, bitch. You know?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so I'm eating this like sad salad with no fork.
Oh my
And I was just like, okay, if you're going to rip me off, like make me feel like, well, okay, I got.
Right. No, I completely agree. I mean, that's the whole with any business. I think if you're not over serving, then you're missing the boat anyway. That's the whole point.
Yeah. It's like
too many people just try to just match what they say and try to save every penny. Like, dude, just overserve and it comes back.
Yeah, over deliver. Like it's not gonna. And plus, if I'm happy, then it's like, well, now I want to tip all your employees heavy dude because they are killing it for me. Even I got like the place is just poorly managed. Like you can't leave this in the show, right? But like the place is poorly managed. This morning I go and I order a coffee and I'm like, it says $9. This is $18. She's like, oh, I don't know. And then the guy's like, oh, I made you a double latte. And I was like, well, I asked for a single latte. You're charging me $5 extra for it. And then there's tax and then there's a service charge. And then there's a breakfast surcharge on top of that, which you pay, which is 20%. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm not paying that. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, no, you don't have to throw the latte away. I'll drink it, but you're going to adjust the price to what it says on the menu. And he was like,
which is that should have been his decision.
Yes.
Saying, because I'm not going to go throw this away and bring you a single.
Right.
Go ahead and keep this if you like.
Exactly.
Unless you don't want it. Then.
Yeah, exactly. So then she's like huffing and like adjust the bill. And I'm like, I'm going to sit through the pressure and awkwardness of you doing this because I don't care. You are knowingly trying to screw me. I'm going to sit here and be like, and then when the thing comes and it's like additional gratuity, it's like big ol' X.
And you hate to have to be a dick. You because they should totally handle this.
Exactly.
Because whenever we're at some place and they make any error at all, I love when they're like, they don't say anything, but they come out and you look at the bill, they're like, wow, they didn't even charge me for half that stuff because whatever. And then I'll tip them according to what it would have been.
Right. 100, always.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, if you're trying to eke out an extra $2 because you overcharged me on this and then therefore the service charge is higher, therefore I'm just going to be annoyed and put 0 on the additional gratuity line. Right. Like some people might not pay attention. You've been getting away with this for so long that this is your game, but like not today. Style. And then when the hotel's like, how was your stay? I'm going to be like, it was okay, but your staff ripped me off 3 times. And I'm never coming back because there's a million hotels in LA.
Oh, and that's the main thing is that you won't return. I mean, like I said, they're not going to lose money on you.
No.
I mean, they could say, hey, you can eat free all weekend. You're not going to lose money.
Right. No, exactly. And the other thing is like, you have like, you stay in a lot of hotels. You probably have like some status or something. And it's like, do you want to tell your titanium status people that they should go to any other place in LA because you are in the business of making everything kind of stupidly expensive? Why would you do that?
Right.
Like, what's the idea? And
unless they just say, hey, it's stupidly expensive, but if you sign up for our program, then it'll be cheap. But they've lost their trust by then.
Again, and like to your earlier point, I don't even mind overpaying. It's okay, you overpay for stuff at hotels. Just make it awesome.
Yeah.
And then it's like part of the trip. Not like this. There's difference, right? There's like Ritz-Carlton overpaying where you're like, this was too expensive, but man, that was cool. Like the Disneyland overpaying. And then there's airport overpaying where you're like, are you fucking kidding me? This is an $8 Diet Coke and it's in a can. Like, I'm just offended now.
And I still have to sit around in this standing room only, little cramped, little whatever.
So it's like, make it Disney overpaying. Don't make it airport overpaying.
Right.
Because I don't have a choice if I'm going to fly out of San Francisco. I have a choice if I'm going to stay in LA.
Yeah.
So like you lose every time long term. I don't know. Anyway, that's not why I'm here.
No, but I mean, it's actually kind of parallels a lot of it because you are you're an entrepreneur and you're a business cat, and those principles don't carry over as much as people would think.
Yeah.
Not only do people think entrepreneurship is like a given that anybody could do it, but they also don't understand the pressure of trying to work or provide beyond the expectation what it is, and it's the extra effort.
That's right.
And then they start thinking, well, where's the value in it for me? But like that's down the road, fool. I mean, you're not making your first buck on day one anyway.
That's right. And in fact, I want to write down that airport overpaying idea. You can edit this out of the final
great.
copy.
I think it's a great idea.
Airport overpaying versus Disney overpaying. This is how I come up with LinkedIn ideas for my LinkedIn posts. I'm like whining about something to a friend, and I'm like, that's actually kind of a clever thing that this person just said, or like, and I'm like, I'm gonna rearrange that and make it sound like I thought of it.
It is. No, it is. It's a great analogy because you're going to overpay in the airport every single time, but you're stuck there.
But you're stuck there. So that's how they get you, right? But like, I don't know why this is lost on other places. Like, you are a random hotel in Beverly Hills. You are not Disney. You don't get to dictate how ridiculous this is going to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just find it so obnoxious that businesses do that, and people should be more. People should complain more about this, or like enforce. What they're counting on is that it's too awkward for you to go, I'm not paying for this, readjust the bill. Because most people won't do that. They'll just go,
especially in a hotel where they know you can damn sure afford it because you're there.
Right. Like so I could basically feel this woman going, this guy is paying however many $100 per night and he won't pay $18 for a cup of coffee. And it's like, I'm paying for the value of the room. You're not giving me any additional value. I like $9 for a coffee. I was already like, damn. But when you're doubling it with nonsense, no, not today. Not today.
Golly, that's so frustrating. And then that follows you because you get a stigma because you're somebody that somebody might recognize.
Oh man,
and then
I think about that all
the
time.
next thing you see is somebody, well, this asshole doesn't even tip, which is not even true.
Not true.
But you would get that.
Exactly.
Which is the insult to injury.
I have to think about that stuff. So I'll tell you a little trick. Sometimes I have my either wife, assistant, producer, like go and handle everything like that for me. And
disassociate.
Yes, because then it's like Jordan Harbinger came here and they didn't tip. Oh, he didn't tip? Well, actually, it was like his assistant or like somebody who paid the bill. And that way I can be like, I had no idea. Meanwhile, I'm like, you do not. This was terrible service. Yeah. But I usually will also talk to the man. If it's bad, like I'm talking to the manager about that stuff. Because there's a part of me, and it's probably the part of me that wanted to go to law school. I won't say I like conflict because I don't think a healthy person does. But there's a part of me that's like, I'm a little bit of a Karen where I'm like, I'm not going to get an employee in trouble for something that's not their fault or whatever. In fact, even if something is their fault, sometimes I'm like, oh, this person doesn't need extra stress today. I try to be really compassionate about that. But like when they're like, how was your stay? I am going to mention the nonsense on every little part of the bill and be like, you guys are penny wise, pound foolish.
Well, and as a business owner, that's valuable, actually.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah, well, you would hope. I mean, because otherwise, if they're insulted because you're nitpicking at things, I mean, like, I always tell people, like, well, how am I supposed to fix something that I don't know exists?
Exactly.
So you got to have this manager that you talk to has no clue that you're getting ripped.
That's right. And people will say like, oh, I don't want to be annoying, but like this function of your website doesn't work well. And I'm like, thank you. Why didn't anybody else tell me that? I got to fix that. You're right. This is so janky and annoying. Or like someone will say like, I know you have to mark it, but this pop-up on mobile covers my whole screen. And I'm like, what? And then I'm like, oh, this is crap. I got to remove that right away. No one can use the website.
Right. And you're grateful for it.
That's how I found out about problems. So I'm always grateful for that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
And I feel like businesses often, they are like, you get those, you stay at a hotel and you get that email that comes back that's like, we're curious about your stay. I'll be like, ChatGPT, write 3 paragraphs about the following annoying things, and then I'll dictate it right while I'm driving or something. And then it writes this really nice long email. And I'll send that to the manager, and they're kind of like, nobody ever replies to this email.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is really interesting. And you know what I found to be quite interesting is sometimes I'll get an email from like, if you stay at a nice brand, especially.
Yeah.
In Lake Tahoe or something, we used a bunch of points and we stayed at like a Ritz-Carlton, like, oh, very fancy, right? And I don't usually roll like that, but like, you got a bunch of points, you got your family with you, I'm going to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember being like, they were like, how was your stay? And I was like, this was confusing and this seems like it just cost too much. And the guy goes, I'm just going to remove all these. And it was like $380 worth of charges. And I was like, you don't have to remove every breakfast. Because they had charged my kids for the breakfast buffet, and my kids are 3 and 6, so they ate like 3 blueberries and a pancake.
Right.
And I was like, that cost me $70 per day. And the guy's like, that's not cool. No, that's ridiculous. I was like, I can't get her to eat more than this.
Yeah.
That cost me $70 per day. Like he was like, I got kids. I'm just not, I can't I'm not making you pay this. That's insane.
Yeah. And you weren't even asking to take it off.
I wasn't. I was like, can you cut this in half? Because the kids like barely ate. And he was like, I'm not making your kids pay at all. So I was like, I told my wife, I go, we're obviously staying here whenever we can. Because that was awesome.
Yep.
And yes, someone's like, oh my God, they cut $370 off your bill or whatever it ended up being for the whole time. And I'm like, yeah, but they're going to make thousands of dollars off of me in the future.
Yep.
Because I will never think I'm going to get ripped off at this place.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen. I will always see it value.
Half of it's making it easy too. You just don't, if you can be guaranteed no hassle, you'll spend the extra money.
Right.
You want to be there with your family. You don't have to apologize for going to a ritzy, whatever. The fact is you get to go there and focus on what you want to focus on and know that everything's handled.
Yes.
Why would you risk anywhere else?
It's really cool to see what high-end brands do. And I try to bring some of this into my business. I mean, look, I run a podcast, so it's different than running the Mandarin Oriental or something. But like, you go to a nice brand and they'll have like, for the same hotel, they have s'mores every day at 4 p.m. outside. There's a fire pit and it's like on the ski slope. And you just go there and they're not like, what room are you in? So we can bill you $20 for graham crackers and chocolate and marshmallows. It's just quote unquote free with your ridiculously expensive hotel stay.
Right,
but they just don't care about that kind of thing. But you go to like a medium tier thing and it's like, oh yeah, we got to charge you for this.
For the lobby coffee.
For the lobby coffee. You're like, oh, you want to use the gym? Oh, well, there's a surcharge here. And it's really crappy. It's a crappy thing to do. What I noticed other clever brands do is and I saw this in Vegas, there's like destination fees or something, or resort fees, and they have to charge these, I think, by law, which is annoying.
Is there a tax or something?
It's got to be something like that.
Local tax or something.
So what good brands do is they go, you are being charged a $70 destination fee. However, we're converting that to on-property credit so you can use it for anything from room service to breakfast to anything else that we have in the hotel. It can't be used for gratuities because that's like a cash thing, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm like, fair enough. So it converts into actual money that you can use to buy things from them that cost them basically nothing.
It's also transparency then.
Yes. And so you go, oh, you're basically turning the tax I had to pay into credit on your like that makes you feel like it's a good brand.
Yep.
Whereas other places in Vegas are just kind of like, screw you, pal. You decided to come stay here. You got to pay the fees. Don't look at me. I don't make the rules.
Yeah. Well, especially in Vegas.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, dude. There's a reason why they should make it more inviting. Same with the airport. There's nothing wrong with having a restaurant in an airport that totally kicks ass on service to where people are like, dude, I'm going to come to the airport early because I know I can go to that whatchamacallit.
That's right. Detroit did that well. They remodeled the airport. And then I want to say they made a law that was like, you can't overcharge more than a certain amount, but like you can pay, I'm going to get this wrong, but they made some rule where it basically has to be the same pricing plus whatever 15% as it does outside the airport. So you don't go to the airport and pay 2x what it costs to eat at a restaurant. You just pay you pay the same amount plus whatever like it costs them to run at the airport. Now, the businesses hated this, right? Because they were like, oh my God, it's going to be so expensive. We're going to lose money and all the businesses are going to leave. Well, they didn't because they have a captive market anyway at the airport. So it just turns out that you can eat for a reasonable price at Detroit's airport, and businesses hated that. And it's like, well, too bad.
And especially if it's a chain, I mean, it's almost, a loss leader is fine, but you're spreading the brand and whatever. It's all.
You're going to force me to try Ike's sandwiches. Oh, I actually like these. Maybe I'll go to one. Maybe I'll take my dad here when I get home. So I agree with you. It's a lot of this is short-term thinking, which is really bad in business, and it's really bad economically. And unfortunately, like America's plagued by this, right? We're looking at tomorrow's stock price. We're looking at this 4-year term, this period. Businesses are always looking at short-term stuff.
Yep.
And it's not good. It's funny because I learned this lesson when I was like a teenager. I was selling something on eBay and I mailed it to this guy. And he was a power seller, which I think, or super seller, whatever it was, where you have like 19,000 ratings, because he basically, his job was like selling shoes on eBay.
Right.
And he was like, hey, I'm really disappointed in this. You didn't include the right cable. And I was like, I honestly don't even know. I didn't know that. And he's like, look, the right thing to do, you sound young. The right thing to do is to refund this and I can mail it back to you, less shipping. And I was like, just get rid of it. That's not something I'm going to use. Just get rid of it. And he's like, and I refunded him and he goes, you did the right thing. Remember this lesson for a while because this is how good businesses are run. And he's like, I would always do business with you again. And I was just like, it felt kind of good to do the right thing when I could have ripped this dude off by accident and then on purpose once he told me, I suppose.
Right.
But then also like my reputation and integrity is intact. And I was like, so if I did have a business doing this, because he gave me a good review. He's like, this didn't work out, but the guy's honest.
Didn't
and I was
make
like,
money. You got some kind of bump.
Yeah, it was weird. And it was like, whoa, that felt surprisingly good. So I learned that lesson really early to just like kind of not screw people. And it feels good to operate that way. I could have made, I often think about this, like in media, the best way to make money is to be a dishonest peddler of lies that pander to either the extreme right or the extreme left in the United States. But that, I just find it hard. What's that phrase? Like you lie down with dogs, you get fleas. Yeah. There's kind of no way to become a right or left wing shill and pander to an extremist audience without also kind of becoming a piece of shit in the process. I don't think I could do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's because you're one of the normal cats in the middle that may or may not agree with someone on my side of the table, but we're all in the middle. So
yeah.
When you're dealing with these extreme people, then that's half the problem. And these people that start those businesses and try to pander to that feel like that's a prominent part of the population, when in reality it's only the people that show up in the media because they're the most sensationalized, but they're not the majority.
It's I forget. There's a name for this. I think it's called the majority illusion or something like that. To your point, where you're like, wow, all these people must hate Jews because look at all the rhetoric around it. And then look, there's a lot of anti-Semitism. I'm trying to minimize that. I just did an episode on it.
Yeah.
But if you took a slice of real life people, like actual people in real life, the percentage is much, much lower. There's a guy named Todd Rose who I'm doing a show with, and he did a bunch of political research that was something like stated versus actual preferences. And usually this is a marketing thing where they're like, oh, people say they want smaller, more efficient cars, but what they do is they buy bigger, more masculine looking, more luxurious cars that do guzzle gas. So they don't really want, that's an example. I don't know if that's true or not.
Some kind of conscience issue.
So that example is kind of bunk because I just made it up, right? But his research is people say things like, yeah, we don't want this, or we want that, or we want this extreme position, and we don't want, but then when you actually are able to pull them in a way that controls for that, they're like, yeah, I don't really want to deport everybody who's here. Some people have need to be here for safety reasons. Like you pull people on immigration or economics, and if they're virtue signaling, they'll virtue signal in the direction that they think people want to hear. But when you control for that, they're like, well, no, I don't really want that.
Well, that actually gives you hope
It does.
Because otherwise you would just think, ignore the extreme, because all the effort that you give in order to educate people and bring them into a good conversation and everything, you kind of have to just, or I don't know about you, but I pick a group of people that I kind of ignore because I can't really expend the energy to try to pull somebody that's on the extreme right or extreme left into this conversation. It's too much energy for the purpose behind it, which is to bring these other people and give them an opportunity.
Yeah, there are far more people in the center. The thing is, and I say we because I'm more centrist too, we're just not as loud. Like, look, I am because I got a microphone in front of me and I run the Jordan Harbinger show. But most people who are in the center, politics is not our whole personality. So like, and you can always tell, like I'll talk to somebody on Reddit, for example, and they'll be like, well, this, and this, and this, and Israel, this, and Gaza, that, and immigration, this, and immigration, that, and whatever. And I'm like, what's this person like in real life? And I'll go and look at their other comments and posts on Reddit. It's exclusively that. And I'm like, oh, your entire personality is the Israel-Arab conflict. Like this is, you are the guy that your kids don't talk to anymore. No one invites you to Thanksgiving because you can't shut the hell up about this topic and everyone is sick of you. So now you're on Reddit and TikTok talking about it. And it's like, if you're even indeed a real person, you are absolutely insufferable.
A loser.
But these are the loud voices. Right. So but then you get a room of 1,000 normal people. There's only one of those people there.
Yeah, and it's not sensational. Like I said, they're not going to put this conversation at the head of the newscast.
No,
I mean, because hey, I kind of understand your point. I still disagree, but I get where you're coming from.
Right.
I mean, how much fun is that to watch? That's an almost wreck.
So there's speaking of Charlie Kirk, right? Rest in peace. He said a lot of things that were like very extreme to some people. What a lot of people, and I spoke about him on my show, and I spoke about Jimmy Kimmel, and people like lost their minds, like, you don't care about this and that. And I'm like, I knew Charlie Kirk. He had a lot of opinions that were not, they didn't make the TikTok algorithm because nobody got angry when he said it.
Right.
So the stuff that he like made someone angry and they had a crazy meltdown, or like he said something that's more extreme, that's the stuff that all these are sort of like casual people know about. Yeah. They don't know that he could also just like not talk about politics and go have some sushi. He used to be on my network, Podcast One. So it's like I actually knew a version of him that was not on a 20-second
You knew the human being, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was interesting to see people be like, your takes are disgusting, and he was a human, and I'm like, you never knew the guy. I did. You saw 40 clips of him humiliating college students. That wasn't the whole picture. But people play politics like a team sport in this country. That's one of the biggest problems. If people on the extreme right or extreme left make a good point, I want to take that point in and use it myself and talk about it and learn something. A lot of these other folks, I'm unsubscribing because I hated your take on Jimmy Kimmel. And I'm like, well, one, it was a guest of mine that had a take on Jimmy Kimmel. I don't have it. So, and you're unsubscribed. You listen to the show for years and you're unsubscribing because you don't like what my guest said about a guy that you didn't know. Okay. Also, though, here's my theory. Those people aren't freaking unsubscribing. They're saying they are because they're sulking and they're whining. But sure, Jan, you're unsubscribing. Go ahead, lock yourself in your echo chamber even further and see how that works out.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, what do they expect from you? What a boring show it would be to bring people in or share your own opinions that are directly aligned. I mean, what's the point?
A bunch of people agreeing with each other like this podcast? No, thank you. But like, yeah, it just shocks me. I don't see politics as a team sport. When Charlie Kirk was shot, that was terrible. When people on, I'm trying to think of, like when people get deported for no good reason by accident and they're U.S. citizens, that's bad too. Like when Jimmy Kimmel's free speech is when he gets government pressure to get taken off the air, that's not how this country's supposed to work. Like I can hold all these things together without any cognitive dissonance.
Right. It's
really not that hard unless you are deifying one side over the other. And it's like, that's just not a winning.
Yeah, because that's the implication is that whatever you bring up with that point, saying, well, the government shutting Kimmel up is kind of a problem.
Yes.
Then it appears as though you're already picking a side.
That's what people said.
Was there any consternation before you even started talking about it? Were you just like, man, I'm not sure if I should bring this up, or were you just compelled to just, I'm going to say whatever I want?
I'm going to say whatever I want. And the thing is, so government pressure to enforce speech or enforce a prohibition on speech that we don't like is bad. It doesn't matter that Jimmy Kimmel is the example for this. It could be somebody deplatforming Donald Trump when he's not in power. It's still bad, even if you don't like Trump, just like it was bad when you don't like Jimmy Kimmel. It's bad. Right. It's bad to have the government push people to not be able to speak and use private companies as their own agency or government agencies to try and pressure private company. That is a textbook unconstitutional use of government authority. Yes. And it doesn't matter if it happens on the left or the right. And people can't recognize that. They're like, you must hate Charlie Kirk. And it's like, you have missed the fucking point, man. Yeah. This doesn't have anything to do with what Kimmel actually said.
Right. Because it's all circumstantial. If you just said what you just said about, this is wrong, whether you do it to a person A or person B, but you didn't name anyone, then everyone would probably agree. Everyone with any common sense would agree in America that, that's how things work. But it's as soon as you plug in a name, then all of a sudden
people lose their minds. Yeah. They're not rational. They're thinking emotionally. So I got I had somebody write a 1-star review that was like, I am unsubscribing. And one, I don't believe you. But you know what, two, the trash takes itself out, man, because if you don't understand why that's bad after listening to an episode about free speech and why it's important, are you really learning anything from the Jordan Harbinger show? Or are you just whining and crying because I said something that you disagree with?
Yeah.
Because these are the same people on both sides, by the way, that will scream cry about the other side being snowflakes. Then they hear something that they disagree with and they lose their fucking minds. And I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of snowflakey. I'm just not going to lie. That's kind of what snowflakey, sounds like.
Yeah.
When I see the blue hair left wing people crying about something and you say they're snowflakes, I agree with you. But when you scream cry about something, I don't know, kind of pot calling the kettle black over here.
Right. What's the point?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think extremes on both sides, you're just silly.
Yeah.
You're not operating in reality. And a lot of radical thinkers suffer from this. They say provocative stuff and they come up with provocative policy, like we need to give all the land back to the Native Americans or something. And it's like, you can say that because you are not in charge of anything. So you don't have to deal with how the country is going to look when you rearrange it by shaking everything up.
Yeah.
And we only kind of really need to look at history to see how horrible that is. You look at the Bolshevik Revolution and it's like, yeah, we got rid of all the royals and the landlords. And it's like, how did that look? How did Mao's China look for the first little bit there? Not great. How did Pol Pot do when he tried to unplug Cambodia and reboot it from zero? That didn't work out so well. That's what these things look like in practice. So radicals, go ahead and write your master's thesis over there, whatever, university, and pat yourself on the back because you don't actually get to make any of these decisions. Yeah. You can just create a following online, professing what you would do if you were in charge.
As sophisticated as you make it sound, it's just an uneducated approach.
100%. You're a dog chasing a car that if you actually caught the car, you would have no fucking idea what to do.
And I'm one of them, but I'll be the first to admit it. I may or may not have an opinion on how we deal with the Native Americans, but I don't know how that system's going to affect things. So I might bring the idea up, but I would bring it up with the expectation that we're going to have some dialogue here because I don't know what kind of ripple effect that's going to cause.
What's crazy to me is a lot of times when you see the people that are arguing specifically and very hard for one specific radical point, I often go, wow, here's a classic example. I was really wondering, what is the Washington Redskins, right? The Commanders.
Right.
Trump made some thing about we should change the name back. And I was like, wow, people are really upset about this. And I asked one of my friends and I was like, look, I know you don't represent all Native Americans or anything like that, but what are people in your family and friends that what are they thinking about this? And they're like, I don't know, we all kind of like the name Redskins. And I was like, really? Because isn't that racist? And he goes, nah, the only people that really seem to think it's racist are the people I see on TV. And I was like, wait a minute. Are you telling me that the majority of people who think that this team name was racist are white people from the suburbs? And he's like, yeah, that's kind of the consensus around here. Yeah. And he lives, his whole family is Native. So I was just like, it was a little bit surprising to me because I was like, and of course, if he said that to those people, they'd be like, well, you're just a self-hating, Native American.
You debate him too.
And he's like,
you're not allowed to debate me. I'm just telling you a fact from my own heart.
That's right. And it's crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. So it's you're this guy's he basically told me, he's like, I'm not really allowed to have an opinion about this because like it just makes people mad. And I'm like, you're not allowed to have an opinion on a racial epithet for your own ethnicity because you're going to make like random people that are not of your ethnicity angry. What planet am I on right now?
We're so upside down right now.
Yeah.
And obviously you've seen so much worse, and hearing it from you is more significant, I think, because of the fact that you've seen how some of these upside down countries actually function.
Oh yeah. Like you go to a place that actually puts these policies in and you're like, wow, this place is shit.
Yeah. So you can relate those things. And the fact that you kind of are sensitive to that is alerting to me that I may be right too. And, judging some of these folks, just again, not judging them, but if somebody's going to be an extremist, then whatever. Like I said, I don't have the time to try to convince somebody that's gone all the way off the rails.
I agree with you, man. I did an episode on human trafficking, something I thought would be very non-controversial. And the core of the episode is you are not, if you are a suburban, let's say white chick from Dallas, Fort Worth, you're not getting trafficked in a parking lot at Target. People would look for you. You would be a terrible person to traffic because all you need to do is scream for help or ask somebody to help you, and anybody would. People who are getting trafficked by their own parents, if they have them. They're getting trafficked because they're here illegally and there's pressure applied to them and they don't want to get deported. They're basically marginalized communities that are getting trafficked. It's generally not like wealthy kids from it does happen. It does happen. They get in compromising situations, but there's not 800,000 missing kids that have been drained of adrenochrome by the Democrats or the whatevers, the Jews or whatever. That's not a thing. And I got letters that were like, how dare you minimize this plague on society? And it's like, I'm not really minimizing it. I'm just not letting people go, look over here at the smoke and mirrors version of human trafficking. I'm pointing people to look in the actual direction where it really is happening. And this is according to like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I'm not pulling these statistics out of my butt.
Right.
They are thankful that shows like ours do episodes like this, because when QAnon, for example, these kooks, when they say that there's thousands of children being trafficked in a basement of a ping pong restaurant in Washington, D.C., and people get upset about that and they focus on that, what they're not focusing on is, look at all these actual people who are really being trafficked for real over here, where they're like girls from El Salvador that are being told they're going to get jobs in restaurants in Texas and then they're sex trafficked.
Right.
Like that's where it's actually happening.
And some of those ones that you're talking about, if they're the rich white girl, so to speak, or whatever that people worry about, they get trafficked when they lose the silver spoon. You have just as many problems when you grow up in some wealthy household or whatever, whether it's over religious or you don't have to work or whatever, and you come disenchanted as a kid, you're a teenager, and you find a boyfriend. That's usually that's usually a boyfriend that'll get you out into that situation.
It's true. So there's a woman who gave a TED Talk, and she went to my high school well before me, probably 10 or 20 years before me. So she's a little bit older now. She met a guy at the school. This is like a suburban upper middle class high school, public school. She went over to his house. She hooked up with him. He was like, hey, let me take some pictures of you. She was like, I don't really want that. And I think he was like, well, I already did, or whatever. I can't remember the exact circumstances. And then he was like, I'm going to show everyone unless you sneak out of your house at night and come meet me. And she was like, okay, fine. So she sneaks out of her house and she's like, I guess I have to keep hooking up with this guy. And he's like, no, you're going to hook up with one of my friends. And she had to keep doing that and doing that and doing that. And then so she was trafficked by that. And the guy was like, I'm going to show everyone these pictures. I'm going to show your dad. He's going to lose his job because his daughter is in porn. Like, he trafficked her that way. So it does happen.
It's the naivety of the age group of people too, really. I mean, if you don't speak the language, yes, in Europe, El Salvador, and then obviously you have less of an advantage because you can't even communicate well.
That's right.
But that's it. I mean, you're just an ignorant 15-year-old that's sneaking out and going out with some dude that's 20.
Right.
That's how it starts.
And that happens. It's super rare. The real heavy duty, tons of trafficking happening is like drug addict parents pimping out their 13-year-old daughter, sadly, or people who have fake restaurant jobs. And they get a bunch of people coming in from, like I said earlier, El Salvador, and they say, hey, we need servers at my Salvadorian restaurant. And then you show up and they don't have a job for you in Texas. It's actually in, Alaska or whatever. I don't know. And it's not at a restaurant. Like that's the sort of industrial strength. It's not Taken with Liam Neeson where your daughter goes to vacation in France and she ends up being bought by a guy in a kafia. That's just not real.
Yeah. And most dads aren't that badass either. So,
no, unfortunately.
We would go chasing, but I don't know.
Yeah, he got lucky a lot in that movie, right? Like he went to the airport, he spotted the guy right away. The guy jumped and killed himself in traffic, so he knew it was that guy.
Yeah.
Kind of followed the chain, found that. I mean, he really did have a unique set of skills.
Don't burst my bubble.
Yeah. There was still an element of luck. I don't know how easy it is to track somebody in that movie. Yeah. What the hell were we talking? I went way off the.
Oh, that's okay.
The track.
Look, it's all interesting stuff. And you're an interesting cat. So you're a Renaissance man, so to speak. I mean, you've been through. You have so many different things that they're in your favor. You've jumped from what could have been different careers and different things. But I admire that. I mean, there's a lot of people that, especially from our generation, I'm saying our generation, sorry, I'm older than you, but my generation certainly, that would go through the process, supposed to hit college, you're supposed to get on and go do your blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And now it's still a little bit, now it's so fickle that people don't feel like they want to actually learn through each of the processes. They still feel like, hey, I want to job hop and whatever, and I should feel like, on my whim that I need to do whatever I need to do. But I feel like you've experienced things that you've been able to actually build upon. And that's what makes a lot of your experience so admirable, despite the fact that it's so many different things.
Sure, yeah.
I think sometimes people don't get enough credit for doing that. But, when you get older, then as long as you're surviving, you've got a lot more clout from your past and the things that you've accomplished at a young age.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, part of my hopping around, like I used to be an attorney before that, I did with the State Department. I was just trying to figure out something that would fit. And I was like, it wasn't like, oh, I got to find a fun job that pays $1 million a year. I mean, that happened by accident, I suppose, but I needed to find something that fit. And I just thought, like, I'm unemployable. I don't understand how people find careers that they like. And it turns out that I was always I needed to chart my own path here. It's not something, a creative endeavor, doing a podcast, things like that is not something that you learn about as an option. When you're a kid, it's like you want to either do what your parents do. My mom was a teacher. My dad was an auto worker. You know about teachers, you know about policemen, you know about firemen, you know about the military, you know about doctors and nurses. That's kind of it. Maybe you know about your neighbors or your best friend's parents doing something, but you kind of don't really understand what they do.
Yeah.
And that's it. You don't know that other jobs exist. And somebody asked me, like, when did you learn about what you wanted to do? And it's like, I think I went all the way through high school not knowing about most jobs. You're just like, oh, accountant, lawyer, doctor, nurse, firefighter, army, fireman, ambulance driver, waitress, waiter, dry cleaning. Like you start running out of ideas pretty quick. And you're like, somebody who makes cars, whatever. Like president of the United States. Like the list is not that much bigger when you're in high school. And then you go to college and it's then you go to college and it's almost the same. And then you graduate and everyone's like, what are you going to do? And you're like, dude, I have no idea. What are you asking me for?
Right.
I thought I was going to figure that out.
Well, because whatever your degree is what you're supposed to do for 30 years and then retire and then.
But you're like, bro, I took anthropology and German. What do you mean get a job? How do you even do that?
Yeah, but you sort of had a whack degree plan and all that kind of stuff, which was great, which is kind of, you're a creative at heart though, right?
Yeah,
I mean, as a kid, you were.
But I was never like an artist, so I never considered myself creative because it's like, oh, I can't draw. But I didn't think that building things or talking into a microphone was a creative endeavor. So I didn't even understand that. Like my friend works in the movie business and he was a prop master and now a set dresser, something. He makes droids for Star Wars, basically, cool. and more. But he was always an artist and he was always building stuff and making stuff and sculpting stuff. So it was like really clear he was going to do that. Mm-hmm. I was always like, I don't know what I'm going to do, man. He's like, you're going to be a spy or something. And I came pretty close. But
so being a spy would be a creative though.
Yeah, I suppose.
You one of those weird things where you combine a type A with a creative and that's kind of where you end up. So, and maybe a starting point would be, without going too deep, because I know we only have so much time, but
sure,
you've got the kidnapping stories, which are completely wild. The first one, the Mexican was the first one, and the Serbian the second one. I'd love to hear a little bit about those, just to lay the groundwork for the people who don't know those, and maybe touch on the Mexican one
as briefly as we can so that I can get a little more detail on the Serbian one, because I'd like to learn a little bit about how those experiences affect the every step that you took after that, because I think a lot of what you've done is build on those experiences.
Yeah, sure. So in Mexico, I'm 45 now, but I was 20 in Mexico. So it was a while, a quarter century ago. So I lived in kind of like the hood on these people's roof. They had like a semi-finished room on the roof, and it was just a Mexican family. And I was working for this nonprofit where I had basically nothing to do all day. And I was like, when should I show up? They're like, whatever. And I was like, 8? They're like, no, that's too early. I remember once I showed up at 9:30 and there was no one there in the office. Like, when do these people work? Yeah. So I was working at this nonprofit in Mexico. This is Mexico City. And I got in what I thought was a taxi. I was going to meet my friend at a bar, and the taxi was driving in the wrong direction. In Mexico City, it's pretty easy to know where you're going because down towards the center is a bowl. It's a bowl shape. Down towards the center is the presidential palace and things like that. And then up higher on the bowl is like air pollution and bad neighborhoods. And then as you get further up and up and up and up and over the mountains, it's like you're not going towards the center. You're going the opposite direction. So we were driving the opposite direction, and I was like, this is not the right way. I don't have to know. He's like, no, you don't live here for very long. This is the right way. And I'm like, no. And then if he had said there's an accident or this is blocked or there's a road closure, that would have been different. But I was like, no, you're just bullshitting me. And then after a while, he's like, I got to ask directions. That's why we're going the wrong way. And I was like, so you changed your story. Also, I'm asking to go to the center of Mexico City. You don't need directions. This is like if I was in New York and I was like, take me to Times Square. And the guy's like, I got to get some directions.
Right.
Like, what are you talking
cab
about?
Driver of all people asking for directions.
I was like, what are you talking about? None of this makes any sense. So I knew something was up. And this is before smartphones. So I was like, okay, I'm not screwing around on my phone looking at Instagram. I'm not getting distracted by my phone. I'm not retreating into it. All I had was me and my thoughts. And I was like, this is not right. So I was like, just take me back and I'll pay you. And he's like, nah, we're almost there. And I was like, well, that's definitely not true. And then I was like, just let me out here. And he's like, no, you need to go to the ATM to get money. Cause I told him I don't have cash. I need to go to the ATM before I could pay him. So he didn't think I was just like running out of his cab at the end. And I was like, okay, this guy knows that I'm a gringo, that I have a bunch of credit cards on me, that I need to go to an ATM and get cash. So he knows I can take cash out. I'm pretty sure I'm being like kidnapped right now, but I'm not sure how to get out of this car. So I try to open the door at the next red light, and I realize it's got like the child lock on it. And so the door won't open. And also there's a physical lock, but it had been cut low enough that when it was locked, you couldn't get your fingers in there.
In the door, like it was one of the old school little buttons that pops up. Yeah.
Yeah, it was buried in there. And I was like, it could have fallen off because it's an old car, but this is pretty suspicious. Shouldn't the door open when I pull the handle? And then I was like, oh, I'm trapped in the car. So I was seated behind the passenger seat. I slid behind the driver, and I was just to change seats in his mind. And then he stops in front of this like gross cinder block building. There's like no lights. It was just a really ghetto neighborhood. And I was like, don't get out of the car. Again, no cell phones. He couldn't give anybody a heads up we were coming. I was like, do not get out of the car. Keep driving. He's like, no, this is my friend's place. I'm going to ask for directions. I have to go to the bathroom. I was like, this is all bullshit. Do not get out of the car. So I put my hand between him and the door, and he didn't see that. I don't know why. I guess he was paying attention to me talking. Not my hand.
Looking in the mirror or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I put my hand between him and the door, and he's like, relax, man, relax. Cause I was like getting aggressive, and I was like, keep driving. You're not getting out of this fucking car. And then he made like a fast one for the door, but I was 20. I'd been eating carne asada and going to the gym twice a day because I had nothing better to do. And this guy was sitting on his fat ass in a cab all day, and he was like 50 something. So he made a fast one for the door, and I pulled him back in with one arm, and I just choked the shit out of him until he stopped moving with the seat between the seat, which is actually really hard to do because normally when you're choking somebody, you pull them against your chest.
Just leverage.
But you have a car seat in between you. So I'm like doing like a full on bicep preacher curl with this guy's neck, and my forearm across his face. So he's thrashing around and kicking and like trying to bite me and stuff. And he just passed out. Then I'm like, well, shit, now what? I'm still in the backseat of the car. I got an unconscious guy in the front. He's going to wake up in like 10 seconds, less. So I crawl between seats. I open his door, throw his limp ass body, fat body out of the car, realize I can't drive a stick shift. And this is like a Volkswagen Beetle from 1968 or something. So I was like, shit. And it's got this giant stick shift. I'm like, I have no clue how this thing works.
You can probably run faster than the Beetle anyway.
Anyway, right. And I'm like, I know vaguely how to drive a stick, but this is an old car. It's got a trick. The clutch has to go 3/4 of the way in, not all the way in. You got to wiggle it a little before you put it in drive. Like every old car with a stick has some weird shit like that. And I was like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
He's going to wake up and start screaming any second now. So I took the keys out and just ran. That dude woke up a few seconds later. I heard him yelling and I was like, run. I ran until I hit a main road. I guess they either didn't catch me, couldn't catch me, whatever. Or maybe he was more severely injured than I thought.
And you still had his keys though.
I threw the keys. I realized I should have kept the keys. That was a mistake I made. But he didn't get the keys because I thought if he finds them, he's going to drive after me.
Right.
But I threw them and it probably took him, I don't know, 10 minutes to find them. Maybe he's still looking for him. Who knows? But I could hear him or somebody screaming and then they didn't come after me. Thank God. And I got to a main road and I'm trying to wave down cars. And I remember nobody stopped. And I was like, big surprise. I was sweating through my shirt and I had like frosted blonde tips because it was 1999 or 2000, whatever it was. Yeah, it was 2000.
Oh, you were hip.
Yeah, I was hip. I was wearing Banana Republic chinos, like, you know, but I looked like shit. And like nobody would stop for the white guy in the middle of the hood. And then finally this guy stops and it was like him and who I thought at the time was his daughter, but like 2020 hindsight is probably his girlfriend because that's how they roll down there sometimes. And I was like, let me get in the car. I've been kidnapped. And like the crap Spanish that I was panic Spanish. And he was like, no, you're not getting in my car. I thought you were like injured or something. And I was like, they kidnapped me. I'll ride in the trunk. I was like, I'll ride in the trunk. And he was like, all right, if you're willing to ride in the trunk, you're probably telling the truth.
Yeah.
And the girl was kind of like, obviously he's telling the truth. Like, look at him. Look at where he is, what he's wearing.
Right.
So he didn't make me ride in the trunk. He let me sit in the back seat. He's like, where am I taking you? Like, what happened? So I told him, I was like, what happened? Blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, where am I taking you? I was like, take me to the police station. And he was like, let me explain something to you. I am definitely not taking you to the police station. One, I don't want any part of this. Two, if that guy is connected at all to the police, you are going straight back here, or best case, you're getting locked up. Do you know if that guy's even alive? Did you injure him? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, you should not go to the police. They're like, what you should do is go to the airport now. But you need your stuff, your passport and your luggage. So we'll drop you off at a metro station. I was like, that's fine. So I took the subway and then I took another like little school bussy thing back to my barrio neighborhood and I got my shit and I moved.
You bolted.
Yeah. Because he had a good point. What happens if the person I heard screaming was his friend and that cab driver had a heart attack and died because I choked him? I don't need to go to jail for murder in Mexico with corrupt cops.
Yep.
And were the cops in on the kidnapping thing? Like, is that a gang that kidnaps foreigners and holds them for ransom?
And
something?
you know now that's quite possible.
Totally possible, yeah.
Were you aware then that it was in the cards that the cops could be?
I just hadn't thought about it because I was 20 and it was like my first month in Mexico
most
City,
of us
probably.
Wouldn't have. I mean, I'm just curious, yeah.
But yeah, I knew cops were corrupt because I remember them being like, we want $10 because you were jaywalking. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. And they're like, dude, we're hungry. Just give us $10. And I was like, oh, that's how this works. I just have to give you money and because you're hungry and you're broke. Okay. Like that was the cops in Mexico
Arrest
City.
me if I don't.
Right. Or just like, I don't know, harass me or something. That was a huge change for me because being from the United States, if the cops tell you to stop, you're like, oh my God, what did I do? They explain it to you, they write you a ticket, or they take you to, they lock you up. That didn't happen to me in the States, but you get a ticket for jaywalking or you're parking or whatever it is.
All documented.
Smoking and throwing it on the ground, whatever it is, littering, like my friend got a ticket for. You get that. It's all documented. You get a copy of it. You have a court date, all this stuff. Right? I'd been pulled over for speeding before once, the only time in my life, and it was in the United States and it was in Alabama, and the cops didn't harass me. They just gave me the ticket. Whatever, right? That's not how it works in countries like Mexico, Bosnia. Got pulled over in Bosnia, and the guy was like, "You're speeding," and it was like, "Nope, that's not true at all." But here you go, right? In Ukraine, one of the first things they told me, this is also like 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago now. One of the first things they told me is never get if the cops talk to you, ignore them. And I thought, surely you're kidding. How am I going to get away with that? They're like, you can respond, don't get in the car. I was like, okay.
Wild.
So a buddy of mine, so I'll tell you. So a buddy of mine came to visit and he was also visiting Ukraine, came to my city, Odessa. And he was like, hey, man, blah, blah, blah. I was like, hey, look, everyone told me this. I don't understand it, but they told me if the police talk to you, don't get in the car. And he's like, you know what's funny? The family I'm staying with told me that same thing. I can't believe that. That doesn't make any sense. And I was like, I know, right? 2 days later, 4 days later, whatever it was, he's like, you're never going to believe what happened to me. The cops yelled at me for something. And I was like, what? And he's like, get in the car. So I got in the car. And then he was like, if you want to get out of the car, you had to pay me $100. And I was like, oh, shit. So what happened? He's like, I paid him $100. I was in a police car. What else was I going to do? And I was like, oh, that's why they tell you never get in the car. This must be a common thing that happens to tourists all the time.
And it's a tell if you can afford it. Then you're a target again.
Exactly. So I told my host family, I was like, my friend got robbed by the police. And they were like, how? I was like, well, they said something and then he got in the car and they were like, we told you never get in the car. I was like, I didn't get in the car. My friend got in the car. They're like, you didn't tell him? I'm like, well, I did, but he didn't believe me. So he got in the car and they're like, oh, stupid, never get in the car. And I'm thinking, how do the police actually solve crime if everyone knows to never get in the car? It's like, you just have to resist arrest every time if you actually commit a crime.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Ukraine, I know it's not PC to say this, but Ukraine was super corrupt when I was there. The people were awesome. I'm not saying that the government isn't worth helping or the fight against the Russians isn't worth supporting. I'm just saying that place was corrupt as shit when I was there. I got robbed by customs on the way out. The customs agents, they went through all my stuff. They took a bunch of my money. They took a bunch of stuff that I bought. They told me I wasn't going to fly. Then they rushed my ass onto that plane at the last second. Because they didn't want me stuck there with no flight. That's even worse. Because then it's like, okay, I guess I got to go to the U.S. Embassy and tell them exactly what happened.
Right.
And then your boss is going to be like, why the hell is this American stuck here with an expired visa, you fucking knuckleheads?
Yeah.
You know, like, and he says you robbed him. Oh, and by the way, he's a journalist, you stupid nincompoops. I hope you enjoyed the $120 you stole from him.
Yeah.
Dummies. So that was the thing. And I remember like that whole thing happening and it was just like, wow. And on the flight home or to London, because I had a layover, this woman next to me, this Ukrainian woman, she was like, are you okay? Because I was like shaking and angry and like upset. And I was like, I just got robbed by the customs agents. Again, I'm like 22 years old. She's like, you know what? That happened to me too. Last time I came back, I had brought Legos for my son and they were like, you can't import these. I have to confiscate them. And she was like, why don't you take this too, you dirty son of a bitch? And she dumped out all of her underwear and started throwing it in his face. She had like a major, and I said, wow, is that like a strategy? And she goes, no, I'm just sick of these guys. They've been doing this my whole life, treating us like this. Yeah. And I thought, she goes, that's why I live in London now. She goes, because I'm sick of this bullshit. There's no future here. And I thought it actually made me feel quite a bit better. I don't know if I should admit that, but it made me feel better that they also abuse the local population and they didn't just single me out as an American. But looking back now as a grown-up, as an adult with a fully formed brain, it's actually really awful that their own authorities treat them so badly. Like that's when people complain about the United States. I'm not saying there's nothing valid to complain about here, but when people are like, we're oppressed, this is an authoritarian regime. I'm like, look, prioritizing and preserving our freedom is very important. I will never argue with you on that. But I think we're pretty far away from being an authoritarian dictatorship or regime. Ukraine is an authoritarian regime, and that couldn't hold a candle to something like what we got going on in Mali, Africa, other parts of Africa, North Korea, Cuba. Those are real dictatorships and real authoritarian regimes. Ukraine was not that bad then and is much better now. And the United States is we're not the freest country in the world, especially when you compare it to Western Europe. We're doing okay. And we need to preserve those freedoms at all costs. Don't get me wrong. But like, the people there's a lot of people, I was talking about my show about Iran and North Korea, and this was a call-in show. I don't do that anymore, but it was like a special thing that some company, this app had like paid me to do call-in shows on their app. And this guy was like, don't you think it's a little ethnocentric to say we have a better system of government than places like Iran and North Korea? And I was like, no, that is literally, how old are you? And he was like, I'm 22 and I think it's wrong to say. And I was like, have you ever visited a place that has a hostile government where the people are afraid of the government? Have you ever? And he's like, no, but I've been to India and I've been to and I was like, dude, I encourage you to get a visa and go to Iran. Do it. You can go. This is years ago.
Right.
You can go. You will be relatively safe when you do. You're going to love the Iranian people. you're going to find out that you are fucking free in Alabama or Idaho or wherever you live. Yeah. It is not even close. Go to Iran and go to Cuba and talk to the people there about how they feel living in a regime like that. And if they're not too scared to tell you the truth, you're going to learn some shit. When I went to Cuba, you're not supposed to do that, but I went anyway because, YOLO. I remember guys being like, welcome to Alcatraz. And I was like, what do you mean? Look over your shoulder. And they're like, we can't leave. We can't do anything. I'm poor. I can't get anything. I'm never going to get ahead. My kid wanted to go fishing because he saw it on TV. You know where I can get a fishing pole? Nowhere. I was like, you don't have fishing poles? He's like, no, I've never seen one in real life. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And he goes, I fish with a chain. And sure enough, on the beach, I saw guys fishing with chains. And I asked him, why don't you use a fishing pole? He goes, I've never seen that, only on television. Can you believe that?
In Cuba?
In Cuba. These guys had never seen a fishing pole in real life in Havana. Wow. I was like, surely I'm just misunderstanding this guy.
Right.
Nope. I used a translator. I asked the person with us who spoke English and Spanish, and he's like, yeah, he's never seen a fishing pole. I was like, surely this is an outlier. And then the next day I had that conversation with the guy in the car, taxi driver, who told me he'd never seen a fishing pole. And that just shocked me. And I remember our tour guide was like super pro Cuba, right? Because he's running a government tour. And he was talking about the healthcare. And we made this stop at a village and used the restroom on our bus. And I was like, hey, man, the kids that we saw, they were wearing dirty underwear, no shirt, no pants, no shoes. Come on. And he was like, look, people in villages, they do that. They have everything they need at home. I was like, why did you make us give them pens and pencils then? Well, it's hard for them to get products that are manufactured elsewhere because they live in a rural area and there's not that many deliveries. And I was like, this is just smacks of bullshit. Of course, 5 years later, that guy, he escaped to Miami. As soon as he got his passport, he flew to Miami. He never went back. And I emailed him and I said, hey, man, you said a lot of positive things about Cuba. And he goes, what do you expect, man? You expect me to tell you the truth when I'm a government tour guide? My goal is to escape. I escaped. I was like, I got to interview this guy. He was like, no, thank you. I don't need to be on the radar. No.
Even being in the U.S., he was still paranoid.
He had family back there, and he's like, I do not need them to have any more trouble than they're already going to have when people find out I'm not coming back.
Yeah, the suffrage. Oh, man.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And I remember my dad was, in his funny way, was like, I don't see people swimming the other way, And I was like, you can't say that, Dad. He's 80. He can say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
But it's true. Whenever people will argue, they'll be like, Cuba has this and they have that. Look, I'm not saying there's nothing great about having certain things. And like, people do need universal health care. I highly doubt Cuba really has great health care for everyone because it saw a lot of people with no teeth. Saw a lot of people who, didn't have clothing. So, but my dad has a point. I don't see people swimming the other way. Wonder why that is. Why is that?
Well, with all that experience at a young age too, how much did that help your strategic communication skills? Was it something that you kind of learned on the fly? Because I know a lot of it was, I know you're just interviewing people and there were some places where obviously you didn't speak the language, although there are many that you do speak 5 languages at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and being a communications expert, do you think a lot of that is foundational and based on just having that kind of cultural experience?
Yeah, for sure. I think so, because when I was an exchange student in the former East Germany in the 90s. And I got placed in Germany. I was really excited about it. And then I found out I got placed in the former East Germany, and I was really upset about it because I was like, I'm going to be in some former communist dump. This sucks. I'm 18 or 17, whatever. I want to go like party it up in Europe. This is bullshit. I was so angry. And then I found out that they had placed me. Oh, yeah. So originally they had put me on a farm. And I was like, absolutely not. That's the last straw. So I said no. And the organization that places exchange students was like, it is a major red flag for someone to turn down a family. And I was like, I'm not turning down a family. I don't know them. I'm turning down living on a farm. You got to put me in a city. It doesn't have to be Berlin, but that would be awesome. Put me in a place that has like running water. The place where I got placed, I'm sure, was very nice. But
yeah.
They put me in Halle-Saale, which is a little like Detroit type city in the former East Germany next to Leipzig. And I went there and I was like, I had the biggest chip on my shoulder and I fucking love that place, man. It was awesome. This was the best year of my life, hands down, as up until my kids were born or something. It was just awesome. I got there and I was so pissed that I was in former communist East Germany. I'm going to hate every second of this. It was amazing because it was so different. But when you're 17, you don't want that. You want to like live with some rich people who party on yachts all the time. Of course. You don't know what you want. You're a dumbass kid.
Yeah.
So I'm living with a family. It's 2 teachers. They had a son. Me and him didn't get along. We are thick as thieves now because he was also an only child. So we're like brothers. I just went to his wedding recently. And it was awesome because I remember early on, my host father was a teacher, but he was also in a band. And he always talked like back when I was running the band and when it was communist times, they had to finagle everything. And I was not used to that. I was used to like doing things by the book. You know, you're the Boy Scout dude. You got to do everything. What is it? Dot your I's and cross your T's and mind your P's and Q's, whatever some alphabet metaphor. And I remember one of the first days I was there, my host father was like, all right, we have to go get you some kind of visa or something. And I was like, all right, I think I'm okay for a while, 90 days. He's like, let's get it out of the way. So we go into this administrative building and he's like, their line is insane. And he goes, what do you notice about this line? I was like, it's long. He's like, what else? I was like, I don't know. He's like, everybody looks quite different than you, huh? You're part German. And I was like, okay, sounds a little racist. Where are you going with this? And he's like, I don't think we need to wait in this line. I was like, okay, that's very un-German of you, according to my stereotypes, but let's see what you got. He walks in and like sort of does one of these on the door. And the officer's like, can I help you, guy who didn't wait in line? And he's like, I got an American here. Does he need to wait in this line? And the guy goes, give me 5 minutes. And he does whatever he's doing with this woman who is from Syria or something, right? And then he goes, come on in. He goes, United States? I go, yeah. He goes, why? High school exchange student. He goes, okay, passport. He goes, all right. And he goes, and like stamps in this nice visa that's like a 1-year visa for whatever it was. It's still in my old passport. I should probably take a look. And that was it. And because he was like, I don't have to background investigate this guy. He's not making an asylum claim. He's not going to get a job. So I was like, wow, how did you know we didn't have to wait in that line? He goes, let me tell you a story. He goes, he goes, everything's flexible. And I was like, well, but it's Germany. Aren't you guys like the most by the book of anyone? He's like, well, when I wanted to get my driver's license back in like 1968 or something, Cold War, East Germany, he goes, the process was as follows. You take a driving class, but you can't just sign up for the class. You got to sign up for the wait list. And then you take the class and it's about, like a year-long wait list. You take the class. You can only go to class when you have class and then you do driving stuff and you got to pay for that. And then when you complete that, which takes months and months and months after waiting months and months or even years to take the class, then you get a little paper. And you take the paper to the police and you drop it off at the police. And then the police take their time and they wait months and months and months and months. And then they finally go, I approve of this, and they stamp it. And then you go months and months and months and months and you go to the place where they get the DMV, whatever it is in Germany. Yeah. And then they just take your paper from the police that's got the stamp from the whatever. And then months and months and months later, they give you a driver's license. And then you can get on the wait list to buy a car, which is also like 5 years long.
Oh, good Lord.
And I was like, good old fashioned efficient communism, right? In an occupied state
drive when
from
you're
the
30.
Soviet Union. And he goes, here's what I did. He goes, I called my cousin in Canada and I said, send me a case of Jack Daniels. And the guy goes, okay. So the guy sent him a case of Jack Daniels and it arrives and there's 10 bottles left because the 2 came out from the customs guys because that's how that was done. So you get your case, but 2 of them are taken out for the guys who inspected the package. They want to make sure you're not drinking poison, so they're going to drink a bottle each themselves, right? And then you get the case and you take the case to the driving school and he goes, hey, I kind of know how to drive already. And the guy goes, well, show me. And first of all, he goes, you got to take the class, and he puts the bottle of Jack on the guy's desk and goes, show me. So he does the driving test and the guy goes, good enough. And so he gives him the paper and he goes to the police station and the guys go, this is going to take 6 months. And he goes, thunk, and puts a bottle of Jack Daniels down for each of them. And they go, did we say months? We said come back tomorrow. We got to get the stamp from the guy who has it and it's locked up right now. So then he comes back the next day and he's got his thing. We're going on 3 days right now instead of 3 years?
Yes.
Right, already cut off the time. He goes to the DMV and he's got his papers and he goes stamped and they go, all right, we have a 6-month backlog. And he goes, how's this for a backlog? And he puts a couple bottles of Jack Daniels on the counter, and she says, okay, well, let me laminate this for you, and you can leave with your driver's license. So he leaves with the driver's license, and now he's got his thing, and he goes to the wait list, where the car thing is, and he basically repeat the process, and he ends up with that, and it's he just greases the wheels. And I go, you mean to tell me that you cut years off a waiting list and a driving course and a police approval with 8 or 10 whatever bottles of Jack Daniels? He's like, well, it was 7. We drank the other 3, right? And I was like, hopefully not while taking your driving test. But that just shows you, like, I'd never heard of anything like that happening in real life. And I'd never seen anything like that happen in real life. Sure enough, of course, when I lived in Mexico and Panama, I saw plenty of that later on, Bosnia. But, like, I had never, as an American guy from Michigan, it never occurred to me that you could just find out what people wanted and they would flex or bend the rules for you. So that kind of dictated, like, the rest of my life in many ways. I didn't want to bribe people or engage in corruption because I didn't have to. Like, he kind of had to survive in a communist regime that was actually authoritarian. But I was like, wait a minute. There's ways to apply these principles to my high school career that I'm kind of already doing. Like, I graduated from high school in 3 years, but I had to take certain classes in Germany. And then they had to send a certificate back to my high school in America that said I took those classes. So I went to the principal and I said, look, they need me to take, I brought Jack Daniels now. I went, I have to take typing, history, and art. And he goes, what if you do art and I just say that you can type because you type up some documents for me because we don't have a typing class? And I was like, that sounds good to me. Because he's like, we can't have you not graduate high school because of the lack of a typing. That's insane. Right. And you're going to learn history in your class anyway. So whatever, I'll just sign off on this. And I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. And then when I went to college, I remember I didn't like any of the degrees because they had all these really hard weeder courses that were impossible and graded on a curve and yada, yada. And they were all miserable. And I was like, is there any way around this? And I asked my high school or college career counselor, guidance counselor, I said, are there ways, like, nothing suits my interest exactly. I want to do this mix of things. And he goes, you can create your own concentration, but you have to have it approved by the Academic Standards Board and me. And I was like, all right. So I made my own concentration and I named it whatever I wanted. So I made it sound really fucking impressive. And then when I applied to law school, they were like, we've never heard of this concentration. And I was like, I made it myself. And they're like, oh, you did the individualized concentration program? Only 2 people a year do that. And that made me look really special.
Yeah.
And then
good negotiator.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, they appreciated that. And then I didn't get into the University of Michigan Law School initially. I got waitlisted and then they closed the wait list and they were like, sorry, good luck with your career. And I wrote to them and I said, and I wrote a really well phrased sort of legal formatted thing with the help of some of my friends that said, I know I'm qualified to get in because I was on the wait list till the very end of summer, but your class is full of really qualified people. What if you let me in now for the next year class and I'll just defer my legal education by 1 year? And they were like, this is a novel idea. We're going to accept you. Congratulations. You're into Michigan Law School. And Michigan Law School was number 6 in the whole country. It's still in the top 10. And I got in after not getting in because I just had a novel solution to this particular problem.
And you got to, again, stop claiming that you're not a creative.
Yeah. I suppose.
I'm serious. I suppose
you're right. Now
brilliant.
That you put it, we all put it in one place. And even for the bar exam, they said, if you want to take the New York bar in Michigan, you either have to fly to New York and take the course in New York, or you have to take a video class, same 2 hours every day, pay rent in Ann Arbor for 2 hours of watching a VHS tape, take notes, and then study for the bar in Ann Arbor. And I was like, this is going to ruin my whole summer. I should be able to study for the bar wherever I want. This is 2006 or something, 2005. How the hell are we not able to do this on the internet?
Right.
And I said, what if I don't live in a jurisdiction that has a bar review course? They're like, you live in Ann Arbor. No problem. I go, oh, but I'm moving. They go, where? I said, nowhere in America. And they were like, we need to see flights and hotels or we don't believe you. And I said, oh, so I booked a flight and a hotel in a Caribbean island. And they were like, you son of a bitch. So they sent me an iPod with all the audio lectures. And they were like, we don't like it, but we can't legally say no because it was kind of like there was some sort of rule / policy because they can't make it so you can't review for the New York bar. Like that's and it's a hardship that's sort of
it's prohibitive.
It's prohibitive.
You gotta be fair.
So it's like you're just telling me I can't take the bar exam if I'm a person that lives on a Caribbean island. I'm just out of luck. And they're like, we know what you're up to. And I was like, prove it, bastards. You know, I'm already paying you $8,000 for this bar review course. Just send me the frickin' iPod. And I remember they were like, this is a special iPod, and if you plug it into your computer to try to copy the files, it's going to notify our office and we're going to sue you. And I was like, I'm sure Apple let you just reprogram the whole iPod firmware to do some magical shit.
Especially now, you're like, no, everything's primitive as hell. Yeah.
Sure, pal.
Yeah.
So I just sat there on a Caribbean beach and listened to my iPod lectures and studied.
So you went to the Caribbean after all?
I did
because I
had to book a ticket, and I took a law class in the Caribbean because they were like, you can't just go on vacation. I was like, I'm taking classes. So I went to a couple law classes on the island of Curacao, like immigration law, asylum law. It was awesome. And then I took the New York bar exam, and I just remember being like, how did this work out for me? Like, I am incredibly lucky that this worked out for me. But also it's a matter of thinking of solutions that are outside the box, but still within the bounds of the system.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff like that in life, man. There's a ton of stuff like that. And if you can program your mind to look at that, you read the fine print. If you can program your mind, this is I shouldn't talk about this, but I'm going to, and I hope podcast 1 doesn't get pissed off at me. Some shares vested, and they're subject to a 6-month lockup. We're going to repurchase them from you. And I was like, all right, when? They're like, well, after the 6-month lockup. And I was like, what is the lockup for? And they're like, well, it's an SEC rule. And I said, but isn't that for shares that are only going to be sold on the market? And they were like, no, it's for all shares. And their lawyer was like, actually, if you're selling them privately, it doesn't apply. And I was like, that's what I thought, because I ChatGPT'd this, and that's never wrong. And I was like, but ChatGPT told me, is this accurate? And they were like, no, you're right, there's no lockup. And I was like, so when should I expect your check to repurchase these shares that have now vested and that are not subject to a lockup? And I know that the finance guy was like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah,
you know?
Per your own attorney.
Yes, per your own counsel and ChatGPT, which again is totally never wrong about anything. You have to repurchase these now, or I'm going to sell them on the market, immediately. So, go ahead and let me know.
And it's not manipulation if you're looking for creative ways into doing something that you actually are going to follow through with. You're not trying to rip somebody off.
Yeah, it's not a rip off. They're my shares. I know you guys don't want to pay me cash for them right now, but you kind of have to. Yeah. And here's why.
You want to hold on to my money for 6 months. Well, of course you do.
Yeah. What's in it for? Why wouldn't you want to not pay me for 6 months? Like I completely empathize. However, I am not signing up for that.
So this is something I haven't heard you talk about, but I understand that you were involved with doing some security at some point.
Yes.
And that's kind of in one of my wheelhouses as well. And I'm curious, did that involve any manipulation or tongue twisting or to get into that industry? Because you also got into an industry where it was more on the protection side than the standing guard side, right?
That's true. Well, I did a lot of both. Like I did a lot of like being a bouncer at a yacht club, which was eye-opening because wealthy douchebags are some of the most insecure losers that I've ever met in my life. I also did security at a Mexican club which had like gang members. And I remember the leader of the Latin Counts gang being like a generally charming, nice guy, which is weird, right? But I also remember a car dealer who sold Lamborghinis who was at the yacht club being like the most insecure loser piece of crap that would be like, you're going to talk to my lawyer. And I'm like, dude, I'm 20. Who are you trying to who are you trying to impress / who are you? Am I intimidating you? Because I'm a kid.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? Like you're drunk at a bar, you're 50, you're divorced, you're drunk at a bar. Like I'm checking my watch. Like it's 2:00. You don't have anything better to do tonight, dude. I'm at work, but I'm a child, like you're trying to front for a kid. You're so pathetic. And I just thought like, wow, this is what humanity looks like. Like this is what drunk, successful adults talk and look like sometimes. Like it was just very eye-opening. But yeah, I to get into that industry, I got in kind of by accident because I worked at a movie theater in a wealthy suburb, and it was owned by a billionaire pizza magnate who also owned the Detroit Red Wings hockey team. His name was Mike Ilitch. He's not around anymore, but his daughter owned this movie theater. And so I worked there, and I don't know if they had theft, loss, whatever, but basically Mike Ilitch is, since his daughter owned the place, he sent his personal private investigator to do some security at the theater sometimes. And the guy was like, he was bored because he's like a qualified investigator who does like close personal protection for a billionaire. And he's standing around at a movie theater in the suburbs. And it's like, what the hell are you doing here? So him and I would talk, and he liked martial arts and karate, and he would like show me wrist locks and stuff in the back hallways. And it was awesome. It was really cool. And he's like, you got to meet this guy who runs this security company in Detroit. And he ended up putting that guy in the movie theater security because he was like, I'm sick of this crap. So he hired that guy to run security. That guy and I would be talking about stuff or doing wrist locks or whatever in the back hallways too. And I remember this is like mid 90s, 1996 or something, 19 whatever.
Okay.
And I remember he was like, I need a website. Do you know anything about that? And I was like, I can make websites. So I made him a website. And he was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I've got a website. This looks like the future, right? And so I made it so you could send text messages to the guy's cell phones from the website. I made it so you could email the company from the website. I put the phone number up there, made it look badass, put photos. It was dope.
Yeah, 96, that's a $6,000 job.
Easily. So, and he was like, if that was the thing, I was like, I'll take a mix of cash and training, because he knows like gun stuff and all this real karate stuff that nobody was teaching me at strip mall karate, where I'd gotten my black belt in like fake in Bullshido or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Right. So I was driving down to Detroit and I learned all this stuff like shooting, defense, disarms, all this cool stuff. And then he was like, hey, do you want a job driving my guys to work? Because a lot of them were like either carless, driver's licenseless, suspended license, or like felony DUI, but now working off the. So I basically became like the transporter for all the staff, and I drop them off at their venues. And then since I was reliable, he was like, can you collect the cash from the guys at the end of the night and then give it to me and I'll pay the team? Because he's like, you don't want to give somebody who's like maybe got a record and working there for 2 weeks $3,000 and be like, bring that to the office and I'll give you 10% of it, which is your share.
Yeah, that's a big thing, especially when it's cash.
I mean. So he's like, this white kid's not going to steal my money. And if he does, I know where he lives and I know his license plate number. And like, I've known him for a year. So I was like collecting the cash, driving the guys around. The other thing was, since I had an SUV and since I also was white, this is just an uncomfortable truth, I didn't get pulled over in Detroit, like ever. I had a nice car and I was a white dude driving around in a downtown area. It looked pretty normal.
Yeah.
Our guys would get pulled over constantly because they're wearing a bulletproof vest, and I was the only white guy at work. They're wearing a bulletproof vest and they're driving a beater, and it's like, where are you going? Right. Oh, I'm going to work. Why are you wearing a bulletproof vest and a bomber jacket and you have weapons in the car, but you're a felon? Like, you get out. We're searching the vehicle. So we just kept all the guns in the trunk and, unloaded. Yeah. And I was driving the car and I never had anybody pull me over. And so it was easier to get the guys to and from work. And I would wave at the cops like, hey, and they'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. I mean, it was like, you can do that. And so
flaunting your privilege.
That's right. Flaunting my privilege. What was funny though, was the cops were also black. They just pulled black people over more.
And Detroit notably is a lot better these days, but in 96, Detroit was a really bad place to be.
And I was on Van Dyke and East Jefferson, and our clubs were on the east side and the west side. Some were in Grosse Pointe, which is the nice area. That was the yacht club.
Okay.
But most of them were in the hood. And there was Club International, which was like down by the Rensen. These are not safe places.
Yeah.
And so I started to work at those types of venues too. So yeah, I had to do a lot of smooth talking. But when I started doing security at the dangerous places, that was all smooth talking. Because I remember guys would be like, you're not tough. I'm going to break this bottle over your head, white boy. You're not going to do shit about it. And I'd be like, man, I understand why you're angry. I'm not here to cause you any hard time. Like, I'm just doing my job. I also don't want to be here. You're lucky you get to have a drink here. I got to stand here all night. And he'd be like, you know what, man? Why don't I pour you some champagne? My bad. And I'm like, yeah, I will. You can flaunt your ego and all that. Like, I don't care. I'm not here to like tough guy challenge you. I'm earning minimum wage. Not true, but I'm earning a multiple of minimum wage. Standing it here, watching all you guys have fun. I'd rather be at home playing Xbox. Well, that didn't exist back then, but Nintendo.
Yeah.
And like there was a lot of that. And I remember one time my boss told me like, you're handling this stuff pretty well, because what would happen was, since I was the smallest and only white guy on the whole team, what would happen is somebody like that would walk up to me and one of the other guys would walk up behind him. And if I didn't de-escalate, all I had to do was go, all right, have a good night, sir. And that meant choke him out. So there were guys where they didn't want to hear what I had to say. And they would be like, I'd be like, all right, sir, have a great night. And then before they could react, some dude who's like 6'6", 345 pounds would wrap him up by the neck and throw him out the front door, or down a flight of stairs or whatever it is. So like, but I didn't want that outcome. I would rather de-escalate the situation because there's not always going to be a giant dude there waiting to choke out the person who's threatening me. So I learned a lot about de-escalation. I learned a lot about like violence, because you see a lot of real violence when you work at a dangerous place like that. You see people get shot. You see people do like curbside beatdowns that are just severe. When you come from a suburban high school where everybody's like dad is a plastic surgeon or something, or an auto exec.
Sheltered.
Yeah. You don't see like a fight is like, oh man, Tom's got a black eye. Oh, they're hanging out again. Yeah. They handled it. It was fine. They've been friends for years. They just got pissed off about some girl or something. This was like, that guy's never, is he alive? Like he just got stomped so hard by 7 people that he's dead, or he's close to dead. And so, I saw a lot of that. I was like, ooh, real violence is scary.
If you go back to the point in which you were negotiating, or at least de-escalating and talking to these guys and then recognizing their humanity, we've had this conversation before. I think there's some beautiful things there, but I don't think a lot of people take the time to do it. I'm not saying you didn't do it as a defense mechanism, but between those experiences that you learned around the world and the experiences that you spent there de-escalating, and then in short order learning that this dude's kind of a dude and he was just a front and he's got as many problems as anybody else. How did that stuff carry into your ability to start teaching people how to communicate? Or I guess my question is, of that you took forward, how much of that is a natural skill? And do you think you could teach certain adults all this, or is it just a lot more of a nature's course?
I think you can teach it, but I think you can't teach it in a seminar and everybody goes out and does it right away. I think you can have conversations like the one we're having, and then people go, okay, I need to learn how to apply this. And then they start practicing it. And then in a few years, they're like, oh, this worked for me. Right? Like I remember one of the reasons I was learning these things at work so often was because, for example, the guy who wanted to break a bottle over my head and was trying to show how tough he was, I was like, what was that guy's problem, to my boss? And he was later on in the night. And he goes, did you notice the size of that guy? And I said, yeah, it was like 5'5". And he goes, yeah. How do you think that guy feels walking around the club as the shortest guy in the club? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, he feels like a loser. So since he's drunk, he probably has no girl, right? What is he bothering you for? He's not with girls. He needs to put himself above you in the hierarchy, and he does that by being a threatening piece of crap. Mm-hmm. And you let him have that because it didn't cost you anything, right? You let him put himself as the cool guy who's just going to have mercy on you and pour champagne for you and hang with you. You let him do that. The other way he was going to do that was by trying to beat your ass. And, but you redirected that. And I was like, oh, okay. Didn't really notice that, but he sort of, now that you put it that way, that makes sense. So then when that happened next time and the next time and the next time, I simply did the same thing. And it didn't always work. Sometimes the guys are too drunk to listen to reason, or they're like, nah, I kind of rather beat your ass. I feel like that's the solution for this problem right now, or whatever. Like I remember one guy, like this was an old man who drove a super fast sports car. This is at the yacht club, obviously. And he elbowed me in the face because I told him he couldn't come in the bar because he was wasted. And then I was like, oh, I can beat this dude's ass right now. But then I was like, what is the purpose of this? It's going to cause an issue. It's going to cause a conflict. It's going to cause a problem. And a lot of people saw it. And so what I did was I said, look, man, I'm not going to hit you back quietly. And I said, but what you need to do is apologize loud enough for everybody else to hear. Because if I let you elbow me in the face without an apology, these guys are all going to do it. And what that's going to mean is I'm never letting you in this bar again. And he's like, I know the owner, blah, blah, blah. And I go, do me a favor. Apologize loudly enough for everybody to hear, or you're always going to have a problem with me. Always. And I'm going to call the cops right now because I know you're trying to drive home in your car. I got your license plate. You're going to drive home drunk. I'm going to make sure you get caught. Yeah. And he was like, you see his eyes widen because he's probably on his third fucking DUI, this piece of crap, or he's driving without a license, you know? Right. And so he apologized loud enough for everyone to hear. And then he got in his car, and I'd already called the cops anyways because there's no way I'm letting a guy drive home that drunk. So I don't know if he knew it was me, but hopefully, you know, he ended up just spending the night in the drunk tank. But that was the strategy, because it was like, I can either get my status back and get my authority back as a bouncer by mercilessly pummeling this 50, 60, 70, however the hell old he was, drunk guy who's 5'2", and that's going to always be an issue, or I can just handle it that way. Because I don't care if I look a little bit schmucky at a yacht club that I'm not going to as a 20-year-old kid. Who gives a shit? Huh. This isn't my hang. I'm not trying to impress these divorcees. I don't care. What I need is for my authority to sort of be respected enough that not all of these guys try to be front and hit me in the face whenever they get upset about something. That's all I need. I just need
perceptive enough at 20 to see purpose over ego, which is saying a hell of a lot.
It was tough. It was tough because what I remember many times I wanted to tell I was like, I should have beat that guy's ass. And my boss is like, no, you should not. Yes, you could have. What happens when that guy comes back next week because his girl broke up with him because she saw his ass get beat and now he wants to shoot you? And I was like, oh yeah, that wouldn't be any good.
Yeah, or lawsuits even. I mean, it's brand damage. It's all kinds of things that you recognize down the road.
Yeah, and the club owners don't want somebody their staff beating the shit out of somebody in the venue.
Right.
Some club owners think it's funny, but that's only funny until the lawsuit gets filed, right?
Yeah.
Against the venue. And then it's not funny.
A justifiable one in that case too, because you could articulate now what the alternative was. And yet you decided to.
So de-escalation is the way to go, man. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter if you can actually handle. Plus, man, once you see enough real violence, you realize like, oh, I'm bigger than him and I know karate. That doesn't mean shit when he swings wildly with a bottle of Cristal and hits you in the face. Like, you're still the one who got bottled.
Yeah.
Bad shit happens to tough guys all the time. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
And all that training stuff, they always say the worst thing you do is underestimate the skill of your opponent.
Of course.
Or the tenacity or the whatever. There's always going to be somebody that you look at and say, well, he's only 5'5" and he's drunk and he's going to climb you like a monkey and choke you out.
Yeah.
Even though you're skilled. I mean, that person exists. So
it exists. And also, like, I don't want to have to look over my shoulder for this guy for the next zillion times I come to this club.
Right.
Why do I want an enemy in this club? I want to see that guy next week and go, oh, hey, what's up, man? Good to see you again. And him go, oh yeah, hey, what's up, man? You know, how you doing? Like, that's what I want.
It's old school.
Man, we had this problem at the Mexican club all the time because the guys would go in there and do cocaine and the owner would be like, kick out the guys doing blow. And we kick them out and then she'd let them back in because they were like her nephews or something. We're like, make up your fucking mind, you know, kick everyone out or just not that it's your family that's doing the blow, you know, like the gangsters are behaving.
And they all feel like they're Superman. So that's the worst time to ask me to kick them out, too. Because they all feel like they're invincible now. Why don't you get me before they do that?
So what we did is we made friends with the gang leader. The reason the gangsters were behaving was we made friends with the guy who was the gang leader. And we said, can you just, if your guys want to start fights, can they just fight each other? Don't fight my guys. I got to pay their medical bills. Yeah. I need them to work. Like, they're just doing their jobs. And the guy was like, yeah, that's fine. If they want to fight, they can fight each other. They can fight the other gang members. They can fight the civvies. Like, we don't want any trouble. We're just trying to secure the venue. That's it, man.
Yeah.
We don't care.
Doing my job.
Leave us alone. And he was like, all right, cool. So those guys would, when they would get really drunk, they get real aggressive and the guy would go up and be like, hey, nah, not him. That was it. I never had to fight those guys. I had to fight like drunk old guys. I didn't have to fight young gangsters. They knew better.
Yeah.
They were not allowed to fight us. It was the 45-year-old like midlife crisis guy who'd had 15 Modelos. Those guys were the ones who
forgot
started
how many
shit.
Birthdays he'd had.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, you just threw a chair at me. First of all, that didn't even hurt. Now I'm just mad. Like, threw a folding chair at me, and or a half-empty can of Modelo hits me in the chest. Like, it's a bulletproof vest, dude. What are you doing?
So, moving forward, and we talked earlier about how underappreciated entrepreneurship is.
Yeah.
That everybody feels like they can start a business and they all just want to borrow money to start their first venture, and there's no sweat equity and everything. And you went on after that to actually build a business and had your radio program going on, built it up with some partners. And I've had the experience before as well, building a business and not paying myself for 2 years. And then by the end of the third year where I'd started paying myself, had, a bunch of my employees conspire with a client and, steal contracts and all. So I'm just telling you that because this is why I'm so compelled to ask you this question is, how did you, having been such an integral part of building that and putting in all that sweat equity and getting to the end, how did you avoid digging a few shallow graves and filling them and moving on that way versus how did you find the resilience to just kind of restart from scratch, knowing that you've been screwed essentially?
Yeah, I definitely got screwed. So yeah, I was really upset at first. And I remember also being the most scared, the most stress was being scared that I wouldn't be able to rebuild something, like anything. I thought like, oh my God, 11 years down the drain, I'm never going to catch up. I don't know how to we were first to market. It's hard to grow a podcast. It's going to be impossible, yada, yada. I was worried about that.
So you were more in distress than being pissed?
Yes. I was still angry, but I was also like, my lawyer and some of the consultants and a lot of the people that we'd worked with, I reached out to my network because I'd been big on building relationships over the years.
Yeah.
So I did like 140 phone calls or something with people that I trusted and liked that were smart. And one of the recurring themes was the biggest part of the company is the fact that you do the podcast and that you do the sales and that you do the branding and marketing and that it's your face. So they're like, the most valuable part of the company was you. So you're not losing anything because they can't remove that. They removed you from the company and they flushed the equity and the brand value down the toilet, but they didn't actually destroy the thing that you have. And I was like, that's a really good point. But I wasn't sort of egotistical enough to be like, I'm the most important guy in the company. But enough people pointed it out that I was like, I can rebuild something because everybody said that was the value. So I just started the Jordan Harbinger show from the ashes of that old show. And I took the entire audience. I mean, that show, I could see they don't know this, but I could see the stats of the old show because I had friends that worked at the hosting company and I just asked them to send me monthly reports. And you could see the downloads went down like 90%.
Wow.
After I left. And then all of those people, my downloads went from, 0, new show, to hundreds of thousands pretty much right away. The other thing that happened was, and they didn't expect this, and one of the things they sued me for, which they lost on this count, was I called the advertisers and said, FYI, I have left the company, so I will no longer be the one who's endorsing your product or service. I can't ask you to come with me, but I would love to have your support in the future. I'm over here. And they were like, whoa. No, we're paying you to endorse our product or service. So they took their ad dollars away from the previous show. They said I poached those people, but I had it all in writing.
They're claiming it was a no-compete violation of some sort.
But they didn't have a non-compete because they couldn't afford to buy my shares. So they couldn't enforce the non-compete. They tried to do that, but the judge was like, if you want to enforce this, you got to buy the shares. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going to buy those shares. They missed every deadline. Yeah. And the judge, they were trying to argue that I was competing in despite of them providing notice. And my lawyer was like, he doesn't have to stop competing because you provided notice. If you want to take action and give my man a check, then he will stop competing with you. But until then, you're all blow, no show, all hat, no cattle. Go suck it, right?
Yeah.
And the judge agreed with that as well. The other thing is my network, Podcast One, just shifted all the ad dollars from the old show to the new show. And the reason that, and then they made a huge mistake and they sued Podcast One. And Podcast One was owned by a guy named Norm Pattis, rest in peace. And he was a friggin' dog, man. And he was like, I loved him. He was like, oh man, you sued me? That was a mistake.
Bad idea.
So he countersued and they were like, oh my God. So they settled with me right away because Norm Pattis was like, I am going to bury your grandchildren with this lawsuit. Yeah. And they were like, oh, and I said to Norm, if I get them to settle, will you drop your suit? And he was like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I just want to see these guys bent over. So I called them and I was like, I can get Podcast One to drop the countersuit that you guys stepped in. If you settle, I know you can't afford to buy my shares. So they ended up giving me all of the intellectual property, everything that I wanted from the business. They couldn't afford to buy my shares, the business. And I was still like annoyed. I was like, I'm so annoyed. I wish I could do something to them. And my lawyer said it best. He goes, you have done the number one worst thing that you could have done to your previous business, which is leave it in the charge of these two guys. Because they're lazy, entitled, and no talent ass clowns. And he was right.
Yeah, and karma doesn't really help in a lot of the situations. You know, if you would have gone on and done whatever, whether it failed or succeeded, obviously it's succeeded.
Yeah.
But the karma part is less of the focus once you're hyper focused on what you're doing. Most of those cases, is that true?
It's true. Like, would I have loved to see something horrible happen to those guys or whatever? I honestly not real like. Part of me is like, that would have been great. But also I just didn't care.
Right.
I was like, I'm too busy focusing on moving forward. I don't have time to like wish bad things on you guys. Like, I don't even care. And also, I also know, this sounds like very weird philosophical maybe, but I also know that like from their perspective, or it's mostly one guy, he was doing the number one thing he felt that he had to do, which was preserve his ego. Speaking of ego protection, He was preserving his ego because what he couldn't stand was if I left and succeeded without him, what that proves to him was that he wasn't required for me to succeed. And that broke something inside that guy.
Right.
And so me succeeding was like the best revenge I could possibly get, because that was his worst fear, was me succeeding without him.
Was revenge any part of your motivation to start?
No, I was trying to survive and build a business and do what I love.
You'd already jumped out of the plane. You had to figure out the parachute.
Exactly. So the fact that it also like put sand in his crotch for the next several years, and I know it did because we have mutual friends that are like, he still complains about you for 8 hours a day. And I was like, Jesus, I think about this guy like twice a year.
Yeah.
You know, holy smokes. It's pathetic, right? But my new company was more profitable in the first 8 months than the old company was in the peak of its existence.
That's amazing.
So it was really obvious that I had simply dropped the dead weight and moved on.
Yeah. And it says a lot about you too, in terms of the talent and the gumption and all that kind of stuff. But I'm curious too. You've mentioned stuff about being critical of people who will go jump into something with no plan B or whatever.
Yeah.
And don't let me put words in your mouth,
Sure.
but I've heard you talk about that. And I find it interesting because I'm the guy who gets myopic on something, and I've done the same, career changes and just jump into things that are out of left field.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get so myopic that I feel like if I have a plan B, I'm screwing myself because I'm taking my eye off the prize.
Yeah.
Yet I completely understand the logic in what you're saying. It actually is a mature thing for you to say. And it's kind of an immature approach on my part, unless you have the personality that just refuses to quit.
I think there's something to that, but I don't know if I always say don't do something if you have a plan B. I think I think what you're hinting at is when I'm critical of, especially like online influencers will say something like, burn the ships and go all in. And I see these young guys who are like 21 and they're starting some bullshitty drop shipping business that they bought a course about. And the other person, the influencer's like, burn the ships and go all in, quit your job as a waiter and go all in on your business. And I'm like, no, all you're doing is limiting. If you have a job that pays your bills, you should absolutely never quit that until you are up and until your only bottleneck on scaling your business, which is hopefully now stable as a side hustle, is your time and effort.
Right.
Otherwise, what you should do is work that job indefinitely, and then you have unlimited runway for your side hustle. What are you doing? Don't quit your job. Now you've got, 3 months to create a functional business? What the hell are you thinking?
Short-living it.
No. Keep your job as a server and keep your drop shipping business 1 hour or 2 hours a day on the side.
Yeah.
And then when that thing starts making more than you're making as a server, then quit your job and use that time to scale that other business. What the hell else are you doing? So these influencers, they give these they say stupid crap like burn the ships and go all in. And it's like, no. You should have something stable so you can muck around and toy with different risky ideas.
Yeah.
And if the risky idea doesn't work out, it doesn't matter because you have your day job. I've got a buddy who was a semiconductor engineer and he makes millions of dollars selling sheets on Amazon. Okay. And he didn't quit his job as an engineer. And I said, why? And he's like, eventually I will. I just have to convince myself that my business is not going to magically implode. And I was like,
sustainable.
It's sustainable. And so he eventually quit his job, but it was actually really smart because if you're making millions of dollars selling something on Amazon, all Amazon has to do is decide to make an Amazon Basics version that's $1.50 cheaper than yours, and you are going to lose everything.
Right. All your eggs are in one basket.
Everything.
That's a tough one.
I had a lot of friends who were internet marketers back in the day who would do these like long, convincing sales letters, and they were making millions of dollars a month. And then Google went, you know what? We don't like these. They kind of pollute the internet. The search results are annoying. They're kind of bad businesses. They're run poorly. They rip people off. People are blaming us for surfacing them in results. All right, find websites that look like this and just deprioritize them. And these people went from making $2 million a month to making $20 a year.
Yikes.
And they just made shit.
Yikes.
Because Google was like, nah, no thanks. I think it was called the Panda update, and people were calling it like the Panda apocalypse because it was it was called Google Panda. And it just was like, we're getting rid of all these shady fly-by-night video sales letters. Those guys, I remember envying the shit out of those guys for years because they'd be like, Jordan, let's go to Vegas. I just had my first $10,000 day or whatever. And I'm like, what? How are you doing? So I was like, I got to get into this business. They're like, we'll show you how to do it. It looked shady. I didn't really want to do it. I was working on my other business. Those guys, I remember the day they were like, dude, are you hiring? Because I got to work at McDonald's or something. Like, I don't have any skills. My sales stuff, my sales copy stuff is over. They couldn't pivot. They didn't get warning. Google wasn't like, hey, FYI,
right,
we're going to shut you guys down in 6 months. It was like one day their sites just weren't up.
And it's interesting because as fast as I tell you that I'm the guy that jumps in, I've also given advice to close friends or family and too said, don't quit your job, because I also feel like the hustle is missing from people. Everyone's coming out with a new program to figure out how to work less to get more, which is it's a beautiful concept.
Sure.
And that's everyone's goal. But, from the jump, you got to put in the time. I said, if you really love the idea of what you're going to do, you're going to be a musician, you're going to be whatever, that's great. Keep your grocery store gig or whatever. And if you really, really want to kick ass, you'll still spend 8 or 9 hours a day doing the other thing on top of your job because that's how bad you really want to do it. And you'll figure it out. And that I appreciate that point is that then you have an actual runway. You're not under the gun to where you have to basically pull up stakes after 3 or 4 months because you went bankrupt already.
I think it's the stupidest idea. You should only quit your day job when the limit on scaling your other business is time. That's it.
So what about AI? Do you think AI is going to flood the market with all of these same types of questions, especially in the creative industries? You see the jobs getting taken away, and in the industry that you're in, it's very human centric, obviously, but I think even podcasting is moving in that direction. What are your sentiment on that?
I think so. You can have a really good podcast that uses some AI elements. Like I'll dump all this crazy amounts of notes from like a book, a movie, a TV show, a YouTube video, and I'll put it in a document. I used to spend like an hour trying to figure out how that's going to look. Now I dump it into ChatGPT and I go, organize this in a way that Jordan Harbinger would organize it for his podcast. And it comes up with something that's like 80% there. And I move the rest of the stuff around myself manually and add my personality to it. And it saves me like an hour and a half. Or I'll get a book that I don't want to read because I've already read 3 of the other guys' books, or I don't have time and I've done 10 hours of research, but there's another thing that came out and they only got it to me 3 days before. I'll be like, read this whole book and see if I'm missing any key points in my current edition of notes. And it'll go, oh, well, he does talk more about his time in prison in the book, and you don't have anything on that. And I'm like, all right, craft me a 10-minute segment about that. And I'll maybe use some of that in my work. I don't think that we're going anywhere soon where there's going to be like an AI version of me that's better than me. That's unlikely that that a real human's going to want to talk to a robot interviewer. And also AGI, which is like what people think AI is, artificial general intelligence. They keep saying that's around the corner, but I know that that's bullshit from people who are industry insiders.
Really?
It's like 50 years away. It's not 5 years away. And if it's even possible, which I'm sure it is, but it's like I'll be dead by the time that's good.
Really? It's fascinating.
Yeah. If you look back at, I'm doing a whole show about this, but if you look back at AI research, they had AI research in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It was not what it is now, but they had it. Mm-hmm. There are deserts where they go, can't really do much more with this for the next several years because the limitation is we actually need 1 billion times more computing power. And that's just not going to happen anytime soon. So then it just sort of sits there all through the 80s, through the 90s. And then in the 2000s, they're like, look, we can do like 100 million times the amount of computing power. And it's like, okay, all right, that's a big leap. And then they go, but we kind of need like to 10x that. Well, okay, now you have 1 billion times the computing power. It's just super expensive. Well, we actually need like 100 billion times. So it's just, the requirements for these neural networks goes up and up and up and up. And they can't solve problems like AI hallucinating. They don't have the ability to do that because it's kind of like a feature, not a bug. That's kind of how it works. So in order to fix that, they're not close to fixing that. They don't know how to fix that. The top AI researchers don't understand even fully how it happens because you can't look at a neural network and see how it came to a conclusion. It's just not how it works. It's not a math problem.
Philosophically, truth is not finite either in a lot of cases too. So it makes it even more complex to come to a conclusion.
So they can't really figure out exactly how to solve this problem. All they can do is say, fact check this, does this, and you can do that, and it goes again and again and again and again and again, but it just takes more computing power to do that. And it can't create things. All it can do is take things that humans have created already and reorganize them. It's like a very fancy autocomplete or autocorrect.
Yeah.
And it can do that with the power of Google, but it's not close to being like a thinking conscious machine. And that's what you need in order to have a good conversation with somebody. There are AI podcasts now, and they sound pretty real. The voices and stuff are good, but it's still missing something and it's really boring. And the reason is because it just can't do what humans do.
Yeah, it does sound really contrived.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like me going, I have questions that I want to hit that I've skipped 90% of anyway.
It sounds like my podcast did in the beginning, where you're like we didn't have AI then, but I'm pretty sure people would have gone like, is this guy real? He's not. This is not interesting. This guy's not good at this.
Well, you've interviewed people from, art forgers to Nobel Prize laureates. What direction do you plan to go in the future? And has the direction that you're taking the show changed since you've been doing it so long now and you do it so consistently? Has your purpose behind the show changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be about how to meet women and stuff back in the day. I used to just talk about dating and relationships, but then I got interested in body language and reading people and talking with certain people and criminals or investigators or undercover cops or whatever like you. And that became more my focus. Now I don't really talk. I mean, I'll do like a once a year episode on dating or something. It's kind of fun, but it really don't focus on. I follow my own personal interests, and that's been actually kind of a secret weapon. People are like, how do you manage to stay engaged with so many people of so many different types? I'm just really naturally curious about those things. If I'm not interested in a topic, I can't really fake the curiosity. It's really hard. I'm not a good actor.
Great point.
So I just won't do the show. If I read a book and I'm like, that was kind of boring, I just cancel the show. And my wife's like, "Whoa, you read that whole thing?" And the answer is no. And my show booker's like, "You read the whole 10-hour book?" And the answer is no. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? But I can't fake it. It's not good. It's not fun. It's not interesting. I don't want to do it. And so, I really follow my own interests. And that's been, again, a superpower because I don't have to like pretend to be excited about something. I am excited about that thing. And then after the interview, I never want to see that person again because I've already read their book and spent 10 hours watching all their videos. And I'm like, I need a break from you for 90 days.
Yeah. Your time organization is impressive with the amount of shows that you're doing. 3 shows a week. Mm-hmm. Is that right? 3 shows a week and millions of downloads every month. Yeah. And that's impressive because I would know, and this is one of the things I truly appreciate about you, and I really do mean it. I'm not just pandering.
You're fluffing me up good. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Is the fact that you do your research.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've been interviewed before where you sit down and you're like, these people obviously don't know anything about, so you get these surface level things that happen.
It's the worst.
Yeah. So I appreciate that about you, and it's got to be insane putting in that kind of time. But I think that's a reflection on your work ethic and stuff too.
That's true. And thank you for saying that. It's true. It's kind of like you would not go to court being like, hope they don't ask me about this. You know what I mean? Like, that's bad. You would be disbarred if you practiced law like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't go into an interview being like, God, I hope they don't notice that I don't know what this person does or did or anything about it. That's going to go poorly. My audience is pretty smart. they're going to know if I came in and I'm just bullshit. And the guest is going to sit there and be like, you don't even know how to pronounce my name? Are you sure you did research about this?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. So I try to be really conscious of that. And you're right. I would say one of the worst interviews I've ever been in, I went on, it was like an online one, and I went in the Zoom room or whatever it was, and the guy goes, are you interviewing me or am I interviewing you? And I was like, tell me you've done no preparation without telling me you've done no preparation.
Please tell me you're a comedian, because that's got to be facetiousness coming out of your voice,
and
right?
I was like, and I remember going like, you're interviewing me. Just knowing that the next 45 minutes or however long it was going to be the most teeth-pulling, painful, annoying surface-level conversation of my entire life.
Yeah, and you can make it work. You've got guests, I'm sure, that have a great gift of gab, but you can still tell it's just not authentic because they're having to fill in all these gaps. And, this interview has gone every direction that my notes don't say.
Yeah, I know. You sent me some things. You sent my wife some stuff like, here are the topics I want to discuss. And I was like, no, sir, not today. Like, swipe them off the desk. Like, I'm going to start by talking about irrelevant things and I'm never going to shut up.
But I love it. But that's the point. This has been a conversation and I quite appreciate it. One last thing is, and this is probably a question you've gotten before, but I actually do want an answer because I'll make it a little easier on you, is what guest or guests have affected you or taught you the most personally, just on a personal level? Obviously, you've had amazing people at all kind of levels here. Is there some guest that actually kind of transformed the way you think or just inspired you beyond something that you expected?
I mean, many of the guests have done that, yes, but people probably want to hear like a cool, famous person that they recognize also, which is good.
Yeah.
I mean,
not really.
I think one of the things that I think is stuck with me, not just because he was famous, but because he passed away a few months after recording the interview, was Kobe Bryant. And it wasn't anything he said in particular. It was, we were talking about parenting, and I noticed on my way to the interview, I looked at his Instagram, which I didn't even know he had. And it was all like pictures of his kids playing soccer or something, or basketball, or running track or something. And I thought that was interesting because I was like, wow, I thought this was going to be branded by, I don't know, Nike or something, or like him selling something. And it was just like him and his kid. And I was like, what a normal guy Instagram to have for Kobe Bryant. That's interesting. And I remember after the interview, he was asking me about my kids and I was asking him about his kids. And we were just talking about, it was just two dads talking about having kids, young kids. And I thought this was like the most normal thing. And this is a guy who's had like all the fame, all the women, all the money, all the everything, notoriety. And the thing he cares about most is spending time with his kids and his family. That really struck, because I was like, wait a minute. I can do that right now without being a famous NBA player with $1 billion in my bank account.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. There's this guy who has access to everything and everyone in unlimited amounts. And what he wants to do is watch his kids play soccer.
And that's beautiful because a lot of those people do not. They take advantage of that and you end up having professional babysitters and they're running all over the universe doing whatever.
Yeah.
And that's really disappointing for the kids' sake because as you know, it changes. I was explaining to my son, I was in a band, we got off the road because, you were born, and then I was trying to go DEA, but I didn't want to have to leave. So, and he was apologizing. I'm like, no, you don't understand. My goals weren't
You didn't ruin my career.
You changed my dreams.
You showed me what was more important.
Exactly. So really, it does. Yeah. It is a life-changing experience to have kids. And you have two?
I have two, 3 and 6. And I think about it all the time. I'm like, someone was like, you get to do this and this and this. I was like, no, I got kids. And then they were like, we got to be sure we're not using our family as an excuse not to achieve the things we want in life. And I was like, I don't think I'm using my kids this is the best excuse ever. I want to be home and snuggle with my kids and play Candyland.
Yeah.
And it's like, do I really want to do that? Or is it just an excuse not to achieve? And I was like, nah, I think this is a pretty good, I'm pretty sure I actually want to play Candyland.
That's awesome. You have lucky kids.
Yeah. And
That's awesome.
I don't think I'm going to regret like not being more internet famous and having money, dying with more money, like I'm going to die with more money instead of having my kids around for the holidays. Like, nah, that's not a good trade. It's not worth it at all.
Yeah. Well, what new projects do you have going on? Anything you need to
Absolutely nothing. People always say like, you should write a book. You should do this. You should film this. You're leaving money. My agent loves it. You're leaving money on the table. That's a good thing. I want to leave a lot of money on the table, because what that means is I'm choosing my family over the money.
You're trading your time back.
Yeah. So like, yes, I'm leaving that money right on the table. It belongs on the table. Let it sit on the table. It's not going anywhere. It'll be there when my kids are in college and they're like, Dad, we don't have time for you. I got an exam. Then I'll go get that money that's on the table. Right now, they want to hang out with me. They want to fly drones. They want to play Candyland. They want to build Legos. That money can sit on the freaking table, man.
Well, I appreciate you, brother. I brought you a little something here because I'm only a part-time Californian, because I don't want to have to pay the taxes here.
Should I say thank you? I don't know what this is yet.
You don't know yet. But this is a representative.
Oh, that's heavy. Jesus.
Representative of some Texas. It's a Texas whiskey that I hope you'll appreciate.
Can I open it now?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
I mean, maybe not drink it. Well, actually, why not?
You can drink it if you want.
I'm gonna have a sip of this.
So it's
this looks awesome.
It's rare because it's not typical of Texas grasses and wheats and peats to be made into whiskey. But
with my bare hands.
yeah.
Oh, it's perforated.
We'll edit that out too.
No, this is going to be impossible. This looks pretty awesome. So, do you drink this?
I do drink it.
Yeah,
I love to sip whiskey, and I always like finding interesting stuff. I'll do. My son's grown now; he's 29 years old, so we'll do little taste tests sometimes. And as much as I appreciate, a $200 whiskey,
he's going with the glasses.
Yeah,
nice. Let's do it. He's like, stop unwrapping things on your microphone, you moron.
Thank you, brother.
Sorry, producer.
Yeah, as much as I appreciate a $200 whiskey, sometimes in those taste tests, you end up coming up with the one that would cost you $45. But
you know what's funny? I've seen this happen before, where a wine expert told me this. And he was like, you know what? It was a sommelier. He goes, there's all these, I'm trying not to make noise, but it's impossible.
Yeah, it's not a screw off.
I know it's not. I was trying to get my fingers under it, but I really can't do it because I'm sweating. Here we go.
Man, I didn't bring my knife either.
No, it's coming. I just have to twist it a little bit. This sommelier told me, he goes, I was like, hey, I've seen those taste tests where like these wine expert people, they'll drink a bottle of like $2 Chuck, and then they drink this other bottle that's like $45 and they can't tell. And he goes, yeah, that's definitely happened to me before. He's like, it's just, there's cognitive bias. There's all kinds of stuff that can fool you. And he's like, and there's a lot of brands of wine that are cheap and they're just fine.
Yeah. And it's a lot of it with whiskey, I found out, is distribution, because, in Texas, you're looking for a bottle of Blanton's, you're going to spend $400. But you could also go anywhere else. Hold on. There you go. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
You can go,
you can tell
somewhere.
We both groaned. That was nothing we just did was physically
demanding.
This
is what old people do. Yeah, but it's depending on if you get the distribution. Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Thank you. Oh, that smells good.
And it's all Texas grasses, which you would never know.
Whoa, this is super good.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Why is this so much better? What is in here? Because sometimes you drink a whiskey and you're like, it sounds like something I'm going to clean my hubcaps with it. Yeah. This is almost like slightly sweeter, but there's also almost like a cinnamony flavor going on.
Yeah, I think so too. It's on the note, you get a lot of that vanilla-ish, and you don't get the fire until it's down your throat already.
No, this is
you get just a little bit though.
Wow. No, this is super good.
Well, enjoy, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, I will absolutely do that. I'm gonna have to Google how you travel with a bottle of whiskey in your do I check it in my suitcase? I think I have to, but also how's that gonna work?
So if you have problems with that, let me know. I'll have a bottle shipped to you.
Yeah, this is super good. I'm gonna take a picture.
No hard feelings if you have to if you struggle getting that back to the casa. Just let me know.
Worst case, one of my friends is going to hold on to it for me here in LA, and I'm going to come back and there's going to be none left, but whatever.
Yeah, I want to take care of you. You just make sure, man. Yeah. It's all good for a brother.
This is really, really good.
I appreciate you burning time with me, and
my pleasure.
I know you're busy as hell, so thought I would at least bring some kind of rep of Texas. If you're ever in Texas, hit a brother up. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Let me know.
Man, this is so good. Thank you very much, man. This is a fun conversation.